What's going on, everyone? Back for another episode of the MLS Digest weekly preview show, where we go over our favorite MLS games of each week, and I try to give out my best betting picks. And so far, so good. Coming off week 8, where we went 2-1-1, so that's our fourth straight winning week since starting this show, and we're looking to keep it going. Just to go over those picks, we had, let's see, we had Timbers and LAFC both to score in over 2.5. Timbers hosting LAFC, and that was an easy hit, ended 2-2. But it hit that our bet hit by half, and then we had Kansas City and Miami at Arrowhead, a really crazy game. That was a 3-2 game for Miami. Messi showed out. Everyone showed out. We expected both defenses to be leaky, and it happened. Ended up hitting early on in the second half. And then, so those were our two wins. And RSL, we took on the money line against Crew in a very vulnerable spot. And RSL had plenty of chances. They, dominated that game for the most part in terms of chance creation, but couldn't put away any of those chances. And Columbus was rotating about 10 or 11 players there after beating Tigres, but ended 0-0. As did a couple other games that we didn't have bets on, but just around the league. So really interesting week there. So that was our one loss for RSL since they tied. And on Sunday we had St. Louis -1. They ended up squeaking out a 1-0. Austin once again offered like nothing. I don't even think they got a tenth of an expected goal. And yeah, but St. Louis, they had a couple chances to cover that -1 and win by more than one, but that ended up pushing for us. So on to week 9, I'm going to have 5 picks for you guys, and let's get into it. First here, I'm taking the Columbus Crew, who are hosting the Portland Timbers. I'm taking them on the -1, meaning they have to win by 2. But if they win by 1, we push. And it's at plus 102, which I think is really good value. The money line is obviously super juiced, and it's juiced for a reason. The Crew are the best team in MLS, as we all know. And they're at home, where they're 3 wins and a draw. And obviously they have a lot of schedule congestion, and that's played into a couple of their recent draws. They've had a lot of draws recently, but they just rested everyone against RSL last week in that game we took, and they're really going to be fresh here about a week and a half since that Tigres game, and they are playing Monterrey midweek right after this, which could be a concern, but I don't think that Nancy's going to rotate them or keep them out in this game ahead of that. I think ahead of that, he wants them ready, especially because they're hosting that game. It's not like they have to travel for that midweek game. So I think he's going to play the starters normally. He's going to want everyone fresh and, use this as a confidence builder ahead of that game. Both games are going to be at home. And Timbers, on the other hand, they're 6th worst in expected goals allowed per 90. They're leaking goals. They're 2nd worst in goals allowed at 16 goals. 16 goals for, but 16 goals allowed. So they've been getting in a lot of shootouts. As we took them last week in the LAFC game, we took that over and all that. So they want to get in shootouts. But once again, this Crew team is too good, especially at home. They should dominate this Timbers team, who on the road have had some really good comebacks, but I think if they get behind this Crew team early, this is not something that they could, this is a different beast to try and work your way back into a game with a team that wants to have possession and wants to control the game like they do. So Cucho is going to be good. All the starters should be good, and Crepeau, Timbers starting goalkeeper, got a red card in that LAFC game, so he's going to be out. So that just adds to this. This should be a really comfortable win for the Crew, and hopefully they pile it on and build some confidence ahead of that Monterrey match. Second game on the card here is between Miami and Nashville. Miami at home, and I'm taking both the score and over 2.5. Once again, these are two horrible defensive teams. Nashville giving up almost 2 goals a game. Miami, as we see, they love getting in shootouts, like that Kansas City game. Any type of transition play, and these old defenders are just literally not cut out for it and going 90 minutes. Their goal is simply to outscore you. And Miami, they're out of the Champions Cup. No other full focus is on MLS now. I expect everyone to be playing and everyone's healthy. Nothing happened in that Kansas City game to any of the stars. So shouldn't be any, rest going on here. They're at home. They get that bump obviously. And these two have kind of developed a mini rivalry over the last year or so, since Leagues Cup and that final. They played once again this year in Champions Cup, two legs, and both of those, this bet hit in those if you were to take that. Um, and yeah, Nashville obviously still without Zimmerman and all that. They're in an identity crisis to say the least. They're very defensive minded. They want to play transition, or they have been playing transitionally. But they're just leaking goals. They're horrible on set pieces. But I like them to score here as well. And, there should be a third in this. Nashville just had a bye week, which could be much needed. And I think that's going to obviously help their legs and help them maybe figure things out, you would think, in some sense. But, Miami can give up goals to anyone, as we've seen. And, I feel like I keep repeating myself. But the prices they're giving us for these bets are just I don't know, like you have to take these prices when there's going to be chances among teams like this who are obviously not to be trusted on the defensive side of the ball and have attacking options that can expose you know each other. So yeah, I think with the rest Nashville's getting and Miami's stars and just the bitterness between these teams recently, both teams should be up for it. Both teams want to get points, and Nashville certainly wants to climb up the standings, while Miami is currently first in the East. So, yeah, it should be another banger here in Miami. So for the third game on my card, I'm actually gonna be fading my fire. I'm gonna take Real Salt Lake on the Toronto bet plus 124. I think this is really good value. Salt Lake has really impressed so far this year. They had the 0-0 draw last week, which disappointed us since we had them on the money line last week against Crew. But still, that's a good result. If you look at it, throughout the course of the season, that's going to be a really good point for them to draw against Crew, even though you have to take the context into it that Crew rotating basically everyone. But still, they looked obviously better in that game. They should have put away their chances, and sometimes it just doesn't fall your way, and they choke their chances, but they still looked good, and they've looked really good so far this season, especially on the road. Besides that opening day loss to Miami on the road, they have a draw against St. Louis, a win against Vancouver, and a draw against Minnesota the other week. So those are three really good results. If you look at the standings right now, they've been really sound defensively. They're only giving up 0.99 expected goals per 90, which is second best in the entire league. So they've really, especially on the road, locked in defensively. And Chicago, on the other hand, has been kind of a head case. They still don't have that real chance creator, especially with Shaqiri starting. They're not giving Kuipers the service he needs. It's not been dynamic enough, and especially against an RSL side like this, they're not going to offer you much. And the Fire have been kind of squeaking out results on at home, so they have that little bump here. But this should be a push at worst, I think. Chicago's been kind of falling down the ranks since early season in terms of their expected goals output, and yeah, I just like RSL's makeup here better. I think they have what it takes to at least get a point here, and maybe steal a win for a pretty lackluster Fire team who is also that kind of struggle in the attacking phase was kind of emphasized last week against Red Bulls when they were going up against 10-man Red Bulls for an entire half and couldn't break that type of team down. So that is Red Bulls, but still, with a man down for that long, you should be able to get a win there, even if it's on the road. So clearly they have issues there, and Real Salt Lake offer a similar type of makeup. And yeah, so this should be a push here at worst, and hopefully, as much as it pains me to say, Salt Lake has, I think, the better chance of getting the 3 points here. Fourth game here, I'm going to be taking both the score and over 2.5 in another KC game, and they're playing St. Louis City, who this has become, or been, MLS is trying to kind of like force this rivalry between these two teams, the I-70 rivalry or whatever, when really it should be St. Louis and Chicago, and that's what kind of the fans fan bases of each team have kind of already made into their own, but MLS is kind of forcing this, and it has, to its credit, produced bangers. Like since St. Louis entered the league, all 5 of their matchups have had the over 2.5 hit, and 4 out of 5 have had our bet here hit, both scoring over 2.5. So these two get up for this game. Obviously, Kansas City has a great home crowd, and I'm sure they're going to be pushing their team on. But Kansas City, they're actually really good. The numbers say that they're really good in terms of their expected goals allowed, but they're not perform. They're really underperforming in that category. They're giving up a lot of bad goals, and they clearly have a problem with holding on to leads, as we've seen. They went up early against Miami, and you give up chances to the best players like Messi, and you're gonna get punished. And St. Louis has really good players here too. They're coming off a much needed win against Austin. They have struggled a little in recent weeks with chance creation and teams that like to play these like low blocks, but I think this should be a more back and forth game, as we've seen this matchup be. And both to get on the score sheet here. But yeah, KC should be full strength. They're staying home basically. They played at Arrowhead, but that's same city and all that. And St. Louis was just home, so they're not going to be traveling that far to Kansas City. So yeah, I think this is a pretty obvious pick here with the price we're getting. I think it's just something we have to take. And Lowen might be back for St. Louis. I think he's more of a 50-50 now than previous weeks, where he was kind of just ruled out week by week. So that would be a huge bump if he could go, or even come off the bench. But yeah, St. Louis, when it faces better attacks like Kansas City, I think they've kind of hung Berkey out to dry a little bit more, and he's saved them in some situations. But I think the chances both these teams will be getting in this game should make for a really entertaining game, and for both to score at the very least, and someone to get the winner. Last game on the card here, and it's going to be the last game of the weekend, the one of 2 Sunday games, and the last game of the entire weekend. And we're back to our bread and butter here, LA Galaxy taking on the Earthquakes, and I'm taking them to win, and I'm taking that combined with 2.5 goals over in this game for even odds. Listen, these two teams already played each other. Galaxy won 3-1 on the road, so they put away 3. And this is just a pitiful, San Jose team, as we've discussed, every week on the show almost. They've given up 2 goals in every game so far this season. They have 7 losses and 1 win. Probably the worst team in MLS right now, just results-wise. Even though their numbers are good, or not that bad, on the defensive side, it's clearly their worse or weaker side of the ball. And yeah, it just can't be trusted. As much as they're underperforming, at some point you just have to say that this team is horrible, and it doesn't matter what the numbers say. You just have to keep firing against them, because something's just not clicking. I like this attack more though, and that's why I'm not just taking the Galaxy team total, 2.5 themselves, because Galaxy can leak obviously against anyone. But they obviously should win here. They should put at least 2 away for us. And I might be throwing a little side on their team total. But I think this is a kind of like middle ground of that, where it could be a 2-1 or something along those lines, where there's more ways for this to hit, and we don't just need one thing to happen. So I'm fully confident that they could get 3 themselves, because that's literally just how bad San Jose is. But on the other side, they're probably going to concede a goal here. This should be an open game. San Jose isn't fit to defend in a low block or anything like that. That's not really what they do. So if this is a back and forth game like the Galaxy want, then this should be a really straightforward win. And they probably should win by multiple goals, as they did on the road, and as most teams do against the Earthquakes, especially this season. Like, if you're going to hang this type of line for the best team in MLS, then we have to take it. And yeah, there should be no injury concerns for the Galaxy, and they should honestly just run riot here. against the worst team in the league. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you like this content, please make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what you think is going to happen this week. I think it's a lot of really good matchups. We're finally into mainly the swing of things, and I think we're going to learn a lot about these teams this week. A lot of these teams, some teams like Nashville are on bye. They really got to figure things out. There's a couple of rivalry games and in-state games. And yeah, it's going to be another fun week, hopefully. We have 5 more picks this week that, we just went over. And so far on the show in the 4 weeks, we've gone 11 wins, 3 losses, and 2 pushes. So I think that's a really good return. And we're going to try to keep that going with the 5 picks we have this week. Hopefully have another 5th straight winning week. And I'll see you next week for week 10 picks. Have a good one, guys.